thanks for coming. What I thought I'd do is I would talk to you a little bit about myself. I will talk to you about the writing process, because I found that coming to libraries and book clubs, there are a lot of people who either have written a book, are writing a book, or wish to write a book. So I'll give you the dubious benefit of my experiences, and we'll see what impact that has on you. I'll talk to you about the book. I'll read you a couple of passages, and then hopefully we'll get into a big debate about personal responsibility, whether we take it and whether we should take it, and whether anybody does take it, which is actually the core theme, really, of the book. So if that sounds all right, I'll go along that path. I'd love you to join in, so hopefully you'll disagree with me pretty early on, and will interrupt me and argue with me, because that'll make it good fun. So, just as you heard, I had a misspent youth studying, which did me no good, and I carried on in that tradition, and I was obviously wicked in a previous life because I spent 25 years working in local government. And you know, I shouldn't say that here at the city of Subiaco, but of course they are friends. So this is the best description I can give you of myself, which is in the acknowledgement of the book. And this is the only bit of the book that's actually true. So it says, with a background in psychology, social work, leadership and management, Ray Glickman has heard more sob stories, sat through more meetings, and written more memos than is good for anyone. His first novel, Reality, is an expression of his tortured past. So that is actually, all of that's quite true, and it really is. No one can spend all those years in the senior ranks of local government without gaining a few good stories. And I'm very interested in the way the bureaucracy works. And the temptation to take the piss out of bureaucracy was absolutely overwhelming for me, so I do it throughout the book. Just to talk a bit more seriously about myself, so I have done quite a lot of study, including at Oxford, and I have been very interested in psychology and philosophy and those sorts of things, and about what makes people tick. I then trained as a social worker and worked as a social worker, and again I was really looking at how people behave, and how people behave in groups really interests me too. And I think that led to an interest in leadership and management, which is really, to me, all about working with people, helping the people you work with do their best work. But to do that, you spend a lot of time with people, and you really try to understand how people work, how groups work, how community works. So I've tried to bring that sort of input into the book. Perhaps I'll just segue into the writing process then. So the thing you need to know is, the confession you really need to know is, it took me 7 years. So if you've got nothing much planned for the next 7 years, I suggest you follow in my footsteps and do exactly the same thing. So the thing is that I'm very busy, other than writing. So as you heard, I'm the CEO of Among a Living, which is one of our largest aged care organisations in Western Australia. I can see that there are experienced and mature people amongst you, and therefore I might be able to flog you something from Among a Living on the way, as well as the book. Please come and see me later. So it took 7 years, and this is really about being very busy. So as well as having a full-time job, we had 4 boys, teenage boys, all going through our system together. And then I'm on a number of other boards and do a number of other things. So actually finding time to write is really quite difficult. But what happened was, I always thought that I could write, because I've been doing a lot of writing for business purposes, and I thought I had a reasonable command of the language and could write stuff that was reasonably funny. And I was doing a lot of presentations at conferences, which are really creative exercises. So I felt that I could do this. Now, have any of you guys published a book? You probably have, someone. No? Anyone aspiring? Any aspiring writers? Come on, you know you are. Yes, I can see 4 reluctant people to own up. Yeah, a few. There's always some aspiring writers. What happened was, this story came to me, and after entertaining the idea that maybe I could do this, what happened was, this put up or shut up moment came, because I thought, this is a good story, I could do this. Am I really serious? And I suppose those moments come to people at various times in life where you either do something or you don't. And I felt that this story was good enough and was interesting enough, at least to me, that this was the moment I had to do it. So it was actually a seven-year journey, going from that's the beginning writing to launching the book back in February. So it was quite an arduous process, good fun process, but arduous. I reckon that it's pretty much the same as other passions that people have. So people run marathons, or people climb mountains, and people do extraordinary things that they really want to do, but none of them are easy. And so in the end, you get to that moment, I think, if you're one of those people, that you have to run a marathon because you said you could, and you can't avoid it any longer, and you just got to put in the hard work. And I think that's where I got to. I thought, if I'm serious about this, I need to do it. And I'm really, really happy that I did. I'm really, really happy that Fremantle Press picked it up. It was the only people I sent it to, and that's fantastic. So the thing is, when you set off, because I think none of you have got anything to do for the next 7 years, so have signed up. Here's a few tips, I think. First thing is that you'd be probably like me. I had no idea what I was doing writing a book. So my major rookie error was I chose the most complicated structure for writing the book because I didn't really know what I was doing. So this book has lots and lots of time shifts in it. And I think time shifts are really interesting because they sort of suck you in and you try and work out what's happening. I hope it's not too complicated. But there are a lot of time shifts. The really hard thing about writing time shifts for a part-time writer, because it's not as if I could sit down there and write every day or even every week necessarily, was I forgot who knew what when I got back to it. Because that's time shifting. And then I found myself having almost to start rereading it from scratch to work out, do they know this yet or do they not know this yet? And so that leads you, if you're a part-time writer and you choose a complicated structure, obviously then adds to your burden and takes a lot longer to keep rereading and reworking it. Now I found in the process of trying to become an author that there are two types of authors, as you've probably heard, planners and pantsers. Don't know if you've heard that. So those of you who are about to start writing, you might be, look, you will be one or the other. So planners are people who have to think through the plot right to the end. They have to know exactly what's going to happen all the way through the book. And then they write it piece by piece. Not necessarily sequentially, because you don't necessarily have to, but you really are, you know exactly what's supposed to be happening, and you're writing to a plan. Pantsers fly by the seat of their pants, and they just write. And stuff evolves, and there's no doubt a very interesting journey. Now, coming from a business background, as I do, where I'm engaged in a lot of strategy and implementation and things like that, I obviously come from a planning background. So personally, I couldn't really conceive of pantsing this, because I think it would turn out to be a dog's breakfast. So for me, it was very much a planned exercise. And in the current book I'm writing on a kind of similar theme, I know what's going to happen, and I don't start till I know what's going to happen. To me, that kind of vindicates the fact that you've got some halfway decent plot, and this is going to end up being interesting. But obviously, it's not as creative a process as those people who just go for it and get into it. I think, though, that if you are just going for it and you just letting it happen, it must be extremely difficult to generate something coherent. The exciting thing about being a planner, and this is where you can start to become a pantser as well, is that your characters take on a life of their own, which is really an interesting experience. So they start off, because I've planned it all out, they start off being certain types of people who would behave in a certain way. But as you start getting right in the mid, you keep adding little bits and pieces to their character, and you find that they're turning out to be not someone completely different, but someone somewhat different from who you thought they were. And then as you progress through this very planned exercise, as I did, I found that that person wouldn't do that thing. Which is a disconcerting moment, really, because if you're a planned sort of person and you're busy and you think you're going to get somewhere, you come to this horrible moment where you think, actually, that character, as they now exist, wouldn't do that. And so then it sends you into moments of agony when you're pleased that you've done a social work degree and a philosophy degree and things like that, and you have a bit of self-perception. So you help yourself through it, thinking, this is completely stuffed. This person wouldn't do that, none of this makes sense. But you have to sort of then go with the characters and find things that are really coherent, that people would do authentic behaviour for those people that you've created, and they still fit within the overall framework of the book and what you're trying to say and what you're trying to do. So I found that really interesting. If you're about to embark on this, that is a really fun but difficult part of it. To have these people you've created from nowhere take on a life of their own is really an exciting thing. But on the other hand, it's quite problematic in the process. Overall, though, I thought the interesting thing for me was I wrote this article in Scoop magazine from Forget March or April or something about the process of writing, and what really interested me about it, and I called this article From CEO to I Don't Know, because I think it's very hard, first of all, to show people what you've written, because you're scared that it's really no good. And it indeed probably is no good at that stage, but you have to get that level of courage up to show someone. And you really are sort of going out there exposed, if you like, as a complete amateur, saying, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if it's any good. And I realised the contrast for me, getting a lot of validation through my work and my career as being someone who actually does know something and can help people, and I'm quite confident going forward in what I'm supposed to be doing. But I really found that contrast interesting, an interesting one of it, an experience of exposure, because you're going from someone who people think knows something, to being a complete amateur who probably does know nothing, and you just got to go out there and take the chance that you can do this, and maybe you can't. And so in terms of the writing process, I found that an interesting experience, and I guess in anything you do, the first time, if you're a musician or whatever, first time you go and play a piece of music to someone and take that chance, and we all do it in some way or another, it's quite scary, and takes quite a while. Let me tell you then, no one's interrupting you, which is a shame.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, good.
In your education at Oxford and so on, surely you were writing there, but you were not writing essays, or you say now this is your first attempt at a novel. You must have been doing some other serious writing along the way.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yes, and I think if you do, like, philosophy is really a subject that examines how you think, I think. And so then that helps you sort of try to frame logical arguments and test arguments as to whether they do make sense or don't make sense. So yeah, did do a lot of writing. And I think that was part of having confidence, or my own feeling that I could write creatively. But I hadn't done that much creative writing really. It was interesting, I brought some of that to work though, because you'd probably be familiar with vision statements that organisations have, you know, and some of them I find I think they're supposed to be inspiring, you know, they are the beacon on the hill up there somewhere that everyone aspires to and they want to go there. I remember the city of Melville's mission was something like to be the best place to work, rest, and live. I found that hardly inspiring. So what we've done in the City of Freo here at Mile Living is we've written a story. I actually wrote a story about what the future felt like for people. And I suppose that was a bit of marrying work with creative writing. Actually, I think it is good if you're in that sort of business, talk to me later, because I think writing visions like that really brings the future of the organisation to life for people, and people can understand where we're going and give them a sense of wanting to go there. Oh, good. See, I'll never get to the end, which is great.
With all your characters, do you have a whiteboard where you write,
Yes.
you know, what you're thinking they're going to do, and then you can swap it around a bit, I guess?
Yeah. You've been to my house, haven't you?
No. It just sort of made sense.
Yeah, look,
position around and what they think.
Exactly. And in fact, I don't know if you've seen that. What's that film about the mathematician who goes?
Beautiful.
Beautiful Mind. So So I refer to Beautiful Mind, and one of the characters kind of behaves like, the lead character here behaves like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. You know, remember we've got all these things connecting to other things. And yeah, it is kind of like that. I also had to work out, as you'll see, people are connected together at random, by random sampling in this book. And I had to work out who I actually wanted to be connected to who, in terms of what would make it most interesting. And therefore I had to sort of, work out the characteristics of the different people and see how they would fit together. So it was exactly right, sort of building up a picture of each person and building up the sort of key relationships that each person would have with each other. Yeah, good observation.
I'd also like to go back to when you were talking about vision statements and strategic planning, and I was quite involved in that sort of thing, but I became very cynical about it. In the end, I used to regard it as the corporate rain dance, because you know, they're going back to the old tribes. You know, you dance the rain, and if the rain didn't come, it meant you didn't dance enough, so you did it next year. And firms tend to do that. And you know, mission statement, you know, which to me is, you know, going out and converting the heated, which is not really what the mission statement should be all about. And I found that strategy had to be a continuous process.
Yeah.
There's no way that suddenly this is it and then lock yourself into a strategy.
Yeah, I do agree entirely. It is about what you're doing, not what you write down. But I think that if you can create an inspiring picture for people about what it feels like for us to succeed, then I think it is very motivating. When people say that's a worthwhile goal to have for this organisation, we want to go there. But yes, I mean, a lot of it's really just form filling, isn't it? You have to have one of these, you write it down and you don't think about it. Again, I do agree. So to talk about the book a bit, it's a fast, in-your-face, punchy sort of book. Now, the chapters are really short. For those of you who've got a short span of attention, like me, they're very short chapters, and it's deliberate, because I want it to move fast. And I think in this day and age, people are spending a lot of time on the internet, and they're spending a lot of time doing multitasking, doing lots of different things at once. And I don't know if there's really a long future, well, there will be, but I mean, less people are reading the great works of literature that have huge, complex descriptions of things. I think life is very fast-paced these days. So I wanted to I wrote something that I like reading because I like it to move fast. So this moves really fast. The chapters are really short. And I had great feedback about that. People really like that because they keep telling me they pick up the book and they read a few of these chapters while they're waiting for the bus, or they're just filling in time because they're waiting for someone, and it's just really good. You can do that and keep going. I say, well, you're not interested enough to keep going. And they say, no, I'm just busy. So it's a fast, provocative sort of book. You've now met me now, so you know I'll probably be a bit like that. It does build up suspense, which is good. So it's kind of like a thriller once you get into it. I do find, and I found when I was writing it, and people tell me when they've been reading it, that you do want to keep going, but you actually want to know how this is going to work out. This was inspired by reality TV. Now you look like a group of people who love reality TV. See, I knew I'd provoke you eventually. Reality TV is a fascinating thing. So, don't you think it's a fascinating thing, at least? Okay, well, I'll try to persuade.
What is reality TV?
What is it? Ah, okay. Right, so there are these TV programs these days because people can't be bothered either to write anything original or pay for anything that costs money. They basically try and create a situation and they film people's real life behaviour. So it's kind of contrived. It should be contrived TV, but it's called reality TV.
One here in Subiaco with 3 kids.
Yeah.
3 disabled people living together.
And the dream house.
Big Brother. Big Brother is the classic reality TV thing. So I watched these. Yeah, and there's a program about reality TV. So I watched this with a lot of interest, really, because I thought, this is kind of wonderful and terrible at the same time. And I wondered why people went on it. And this is the idea that came to me. That's why I wrote the book, because this wonderful story came to me and I thought, people are actually up for being manipulated much more than I realised, or that we perhaps all realise. And that this opportunity to have 15 minutes of fame, just be known or seen or whatever, or be on TV is actually really quite important to people. So although that's an amazing thing to be true. And I thought, they're just being manipulated on this program, and they keep changing the plot, and they sign these things with a small print about what they will and won't say about it. It's just a massive exercise in manipulation. And then I was, in my role there in the City of Fremantle, I was stressed to say this wasn't a person who did work with us, but I came across a state bureaucrat who was a master of manipulation. And I thought, this person would be a gold medal winner in manipulation. It's incredible how they can do it and what they do. And then I put these two things together and I thought, what if someone felt that they could manipulate people much more effectively than they do on reality TV, and created their own reality TV experience for people, but didn't tell them. And that is the essential plot of this book, is that someone creates a reality TV type experience for people, but they don't know. But the core of the book is actually about personal responsibility. So I chose 6 archetypal characters. So I'd love to debate the difference between stereotypes and archetypes. If anyone wants to go there, just feel free later. But I reckon there is a difference. So archetypes are the types of people like we know and can identify. So I've created 6 of those people. They all are from our area here in the western suburbs of Freo. They are all classic types of people. And when you read it, hopefully you'll say, I know someone like that. You're able to identify with those people, which is what I want you to do. But the central character, the master manipulator, is someone that most people do not wish to associate themselves with, because this behaviour is incredibly, almost psychopathic and manipulative. Now I wanted that person to be like that, because this is what I want to have happen, is I want the central character to be someone you don't want to identify with, because that person is constantly provoking you as a reader and talking to you and is asking you questions about your own morality and behaviour. So while he spins this web for the other 6 people and they don't know that this is happening, he keeps telling you what he's up to, and he keeps asking you why you keep making judgments about him and all the other people. Because
You mean the reader?
Yeah, he keeps provoking you as the reader to say, you're no better than me or any of these people, but I know you're just sitting there reading this thinking, oh, that's terrible what they did, I wouldn't do that. What right have you got to make those judgments? And that's the kind of philosophy, provocation stuff that I like coming through. So when you read the book, you'll find that hopefully it's a challenging, it's a good fun experience, because it's funny. It's fast and funny. But it keeps asking you the hard question as you read through, because we're all like that. We keep making judgments about other people, but we all have a lot of trouble accepting personal responsibility for our own behaviour. And that really is the core of the book. It's about personal responsibility. So I thought I might read you a couple of bits using technology. The book available here on iBooks, etc. So there are 6 archetypal characters, as I've told you. One of them is the sort of person that I spent a lot of time with when I worked in Fremantle, who is a young Italian guy, a wheeler and dealer type, a lovable rogue, many of whom I worked with quite a bit. And the narrator, who is the manipulator, is at this point trying to engage all these people. So he needs to weave them into a plot. He needs to make a relationship with them. So the narrator is trying to engage with Mario at this point. Mario is trying to set up a subterfuge to start to relate to this guy. And it's called I Like This Guy, this short chapter. So from the vantage point of his morning cafe, Mario kept an eye out for his 11 o'clock appointment. Mario liked this espresso bar. Its decor hadn't changed for years, and nor of its regulars. It was frequented by rusted-on Frio types who were supposed to be looking for work. Mario knew them all and shared their basic values. He did as little as possible too. There was a guy hanging around outside the entry to his upstairs office, but he didn't look like the type he was expecting. On the other hand, no one else seemed to be showing up. Mario knocked back the molasses of the dregs of his espresso, grabbed his mobile and fags, and skipped through the traffic across the road. The guy recognised him straight away and greeted him cheerily. "Hi Mario," he said, stretching out his hand. "You look exactly like the photo in the paper." "I should do. No one else has got this beautiful face." Mario led the way up the old-fashioned staircase to the classic antiquated office over the shop fronts. He puffed his way up the two fairly short flights of stairs. "I'm getting a chairlift with my frequent fagging points," Mario said breathlessly over his shoulder, as his appointment clattered his way effortlessly up the hard staircase behind him. Mario liked his little office. It wasn't flash, but it had personality. It had the usual filing cabinets, a PC, and enough space for two chairs on the other side of Mario's desk. His desk had belonged to his grandfather and was made of dark mahogany. There was a faded leather blotter in the middle of it, covered in scribblings, technology, calculations and doodles on the thick absorbent paper that it framed. The best thing about your own office, Mario often mused, is that you can light up whenever the fuck you like. So he did. The guy may not have looked like the voice over the phone. Mario had imagined a classic Aussie, but he clearly was the same bloke, confidently launching into what he wanted and what he expected. A friend of mine is prominent in the hospitality industry, so this is the subterfuge he's invented to try and suck Mario into the game here. So a friend of mine is prominent in the hospitality industry, as well as being an eminent person in his own profession. My friend is keen to expand some of his operations and is looking for investors. "And you want me to fix you a loan so you can invest in this deal?" Mario said triumphantly. "Not exactly. Well, not even close, actually. Have I got an opportunity for you?" he said in a mock Yiddish accent. Mario was beginning to like this fellow. He had some devil in him, and he was up to something. Mario liked this in a man. "I'm here to suggest you invest." "I don't invest," Mario sniffed, taking a long, slow puff on his fag. "I don't invest, I lend." "You're not the Mario I expected." "This sounds like a challenge." It is. He leant forward to engage Mario's full attention. "What if I told you I'd lend you the money so you can invest?" Mario laughed and coughed at the same time, convulsing from the shock and shaking his swiveled chair with his chest tremors. "This guy wants to lend me money," he mocked. Once his hacking had subsided, as if to some audience that had crammed itself into his tiny office. "Why should I let you lend me money to invest in something I don't know anything about?" "Because you'll make a fortune, and because I won't charge you any interest." Mario slapped both hands down on the desk with two fractionally asynchronous thwacks. "This guy I love," Mario announced to the imaginary onlookers. Then he got up, gathered his mobile and smokes, and said, "Let's go to the pub and talk." Mario slapped him on the back as they negotiated the stairs. "You're up to something, buddy, and I want to find out what it is. By the way," the guy added, as they made their way down the staircase, "there's one condition." "Now we're getting somewhere." "Yes, there's a catch." "A catch? I knew it." "Yes, the catch is you're not allowed to tell anybody about our arrangement." "That's the catch?" Mario laughed, coughing his guts out again. "Yep, that's it." "Stop it," Mario begged him. "You're cracking me up." So this is an example of the central character, the narrator. It has to somehow engage with these people that he has drawn randomly from the phone book. And his game plan here is to set up a reality TV experiment with these 6 people that he doesn't know and he's never met, and he doesn't even know how to access them. So that's the game plan. So a lot of this part of the book is actually about is actually about how do you engage and weave your way into the life of people you've never met. So, a very important part of the book, though, is to provoke the reader not to like the central character. So the central character's behaviour is amoral. Some might say it was immoral, but is certainly amoral. And I keep trying to unsettle the reader by the sort of acts of callousness that this person is capable of, because I don't want you to identify with that person. I want you to identify with the person who's manipulating. Because this person's going to ask you hard questions. And if you like them, you just dismiss and wander past those hard questions, I think. Yeah?
He reminded me of Kevin Spacey's character in House of Cards. That character, I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, I know, I love it, yeah.
Yeah, he's the Francis Underwood, he's
Yeah.
the master manipulator.
Yeah.
Totally ruthless.
And what he does is he talks to the camera,
Yes.
doesn't he?
Yeah, and it really reminded me of that as I read it.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, I mean, obviously, I did write this before I ever saw it, but then I thought, oh, I like this because, I like it. I like the way he makes observations to the camera. So this guy keeps telling me things. He keeps making observations about his character, the people he's working with here, and he keeps asking you questions and telling you to stop doing things he knows you're doing, which I know you're going to do because everyone reacts that way. So the master manipulator is extremely callous. But he's still in the process of engaging these people. Now, one of the best, nicest characters, I suppose, is an elderly lady, a Holocaust survivor, a Jungian psychologist, psychiatrist, a previous concert pianist, and a very erudite woman. She just gets drawn by random, so he has to engage her. So he decides that he will pretend to be interviewing her. He will pretend to be writing stories about her. That's his way of actually starting to meet her and engage with her. So now this will give you an example of how I try to sort of unsettle people who are reading the book. So the narrator, this is the narrator. I was allegedly making good progress on the old girl's article. Hannah was opening up to me. I didn't fool myself that she was fooled by me. But she found me intelligent enough to bother to answer my questions, and sensitive enough, apparently, to tell me about the most personal and harrowing details of her incredible life. I actually did feel like writing about some of it. The parallels with modern wars and totalitarian domination of people's ideas and beliefs were inescapable. In a funny sort of way, modern man of the 21st century can relate very easily to the experiences of less than modern women the 20th century. But notwithstanding my ability to relate and even to care when I choose to, my true nature came to the fore and I trivialised the tragedy of Hannah's experiences in a breathtakingly callous fashion. She was telling me about that cold winter's day when the Gestapo came to call. They banged on the front door and a dread chill ran through the bones of Hannah and her sisters. You know, like that little joke there is the same thing. It's just a callous, deliberately callous statement. So, ran through the bones of Hannah and her sisters, her three brothers, her father, her mother, her grandfather on her father's side, and so the list went on. They all closed around her father, for whom the nice gentlemen from the Third Reich were coming to call. Hannah was dispatched to open the door as the least likely to meet a violent reaction. As fate would have it, the grandfather began to pray in Hebrew at the very time the leather-coated captain swept into the room, followed by a horde of junkies, flunkies. They could be junkies, but probably not. They're probably flunkies. Joseph Baumgarten, you are to come with us, the Hauptmann announced. The group closed around the head of the family, and without a hint of insolence or defiance, remained standing there, silently refusing to give up the quarry. The soldiers corralled the group with their rifle butts and shepherded them towards the French doors that gave onto a tiny courtyard. The tight-knit group shuffled inch by inch backwards towards the high stone walls overgrown with creeper. The captain stated calmly that Joseph Baumgarten should now make himself known and leave with the soldiers. He added, or there will be consequences. Not a member of the family moved, not even Joseph himself. He must have known that he was putting all of his loved ones at risk. Despite the fact that he knew perfectly well which one of these wretched people was Joseph, and if he hadn't known, could have worked out who it was from the way the crowd was protecting him, the captain removed his pistol from its leather holster and executed the family members one by one until his bullets were exhausted. He then motioned to his Gestapo colleague, who finished off the remaining 2 people, including the grandfather, who was the only one to utter a sound, the sound of Jewish prayer said without conviction or defiance. Having concluded their carnage, the soldiers turned on their heels and exited through the front door and past Hannah, who was still standing there holding the wooden door handle, not having moved and not having spoken. When Hannah finished her story, I switched off the tape recorder with what seemed like a deafening and definitive click. And you see, this is like Francis Underwood perhaps now. I know that you wouldn't have turned the tape recorder off at that point. I know exactly what you think of that. I know exactly what you would have asked her at that point. But you're no better than me and no more moral than me, although right now you might think so. Your curiosity would have been born from prurience and not from compassion. Hannah may have an opinion about why they let her live, or she may not. She might want to tell you, and she might not. She might have told you why they came for Joseph, maybe not. But I didn't ask her that. Instead, I said, by the way, you know the renovation work you want done? I've got a moonlighting fireman who might do that for you. So hopefully it gives you a bit of a flavour of how this is written. I think it's good fun. It's funny. I think people reckon it's funny. It's averaging 4 stars on Goodreads, which is really good. With a lot of good comments. So there's a lot of funny. I take the piss out of everyone you know. Take the piss out of people like me. But in the end, it's a kind of deliberate process to make us all think about personal responsibility. So the central character is not likeable and is setting up these situations for these people who don't know.
Does the manipulator have any good points?
Well, that's a sort of moral judgment. Well, look, that's the point. I think that question is actually the point, because the central character defends his behaviour to the reader and essentially to the other characters, because he says, I know what you're thinking about this. I know you're blaming me for what happens here, but I didn't make any of their decisions. All I did was exercise my freedom. So that's what it says often. All I'm doing is exercising my freedom. My freedom was to bring these people together. They made a series of decisions, all on their own. I didn't make them do any of these things. And so why would you hold me responsible? Why don't you hold them responsible? But then the subtext of this is, anyway, why are you judging me or them? Do you reckon you'd be any better than them? And that's essentially, I think, the point of the book.
I think the arch manipulator in our society is the advertising industry. And I think we're all manipulators to a larger or smaller degree.
Yeah, and we're all up for it, aren't we? That's the point I'm trying to make here too.
They're not laudable characters though, apart from perhaps Hannah. I mean, you know, the fact that she made that test for Gary.
Oh, you've read it?
Was one thing. Yeah.
Good. Oh, right. Talk about the book. That's good.
But
yeah,
the fact that she put that test in his way, and he had nothing to do with the manipulator.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a bad thing for her to do, and I just don't think she was the only one out of all of them that did really no wrong at all, I didn't feel. And yet she was, you know, when the wife came to see him, and he was angry that, you know, how could you do that to me? And you think, you stole the stuff. Look, I'm sorry, I'm stepping. Nobody's going to read it now and they're going to say, why did she tell us that? But you know what I mean? Nobody does anything laudable in that book apart from Hannah. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But
look, I think it's just the way that you see things. I think that you can read it that people are just human, and that a lot of the things that they do there, we might all do.
I'm not putting myself.
No, but
saying.
that's what I think. We
Yeah.
might do them. Hannah is a particularly, I think, interesting character. She had, with her background that I explained to you, she has a lot of personal insight. So she does something in the book that she's not particularly proud of. It has a certain logic, doesn't it, what she does? It's not a stupid thing to do, but afterwards she really thinks, was that a moral thing
Yeah.
for me to do? I've now caused a lot of trouble for other
But she
people.
at least questions herself.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas the others being different types of people and trying to be authentic characters, some of them have a lot less insight into their own behaviour. Yes.
You mentioned Goodreads.
Yeah.
Obviously, people sharing and recommending the book.
Yeah.
We use Goodreads, of course. We like it. Where do you stand? Like, if I bought your paperback, I could give that to anybody I wanted and say, this is a great book, definitely read it. And they can take it and then it goes on and on and on. It could be in Argentina in a week. Where do you stand with Amazon and Kindle, the iPad with ebooks, in terms of if I buy it as a customer, I can't share that book with anybody.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm paying the same for the paperback as I'm just a digital copy. So as a new author,
Yeah.
where do you stand in terms of people being able to share it? And
Well, I don't know. I think as a new author, you just want people to read your book, to be perfectly honest. Well, look, it's completely immoral act lending someone a book. I didn't used to think that, but now I want people to buy the book. In fact, libraries are completely immoral. Should be torn down immediately because they're just compromising my income. Yeah, I mean, you do actually, to be serious, have a slightly different perspective on these things. But I think in the end, like any form of business, if you buy the book and you lend it to someone else, then someone else is going to read it and hopefully tell someone else it was a good book, and they'll buy it, in one form or another. And look, I think the world is changing in terms of people's behaviours. So the digital world is there, and I've got a few books on here myself because it's convenient if you're travelling, and it's just part and parcel of. But I think it's hard flogging books. I mean, I'm not someone who depends on sales of the book for my income, so I'm lucky. Some people, that is their only job and their profession. But adult fiction is not in a great place at the moment. There's a lot of competition for people's time, and it's quite a hard grind flogging books that you've written. I can see that you were all discerning people for good literature and well cashed up, so I'm pretty confident really with you guys. Yeah. Especially as I'm throwing in, I was throwing in a tip tank with each book, but I'm not. I'm throwing in a brochure from Amana Living.
You mentioned that you addressed a conference of 1,000 people. What was that about?
That was the National Aged Care Conference.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So of all the areas where you've graduated and studied, which is your favourite? What was your favourite?
Yeah. Look, probably philosophy, I think.
What?
Philosophy, probably.
Philosophy.
But I was actually too young to appreciate it. I think that's the irony of study, is that mostly we study it when we're not old enough to actually appreciate it. So, but I think that training to teach, training to think was probably the most important thing that I did.
Carries over.
Yeah, and it's useful for everything else. So just the ability to test a logical argument is something that is a great benefit to have. And you use it for everything, really, don't you? And really helpful in work. Just kind of say, why do you say that? And you justify that, and does that make sense? There's a good process to go through. Yes? So.
What do you think is going to happen to the novel? Not your novel, just like the genre, like the art form of the written form of the novel. Is it?
Well, in terms of my novel, it's going to sell out, clearly. There's no question. Either it's going to sell out, or I'm going to sell out, or both, probably. Well,
because you started out talking about people's attention spans.
Yeah.
And, I mean, sonnets used to be incredibly popular.
Yeah. Look, I think it's going to go that way, isn't it? I think people are multitasking so much. People's span of attention for one thing is reducing. There's so much interesting stuff and non-interesting stuff to do at once that I think novels will become more like this. I feel like I read the play well in terms of the way this is written. And novellas, I think, you know, like really short stories and very short books will probably become fashionable. But it's hard to make, you know, I think only the really famous people make any money out of writing books. You know, they have to sort of sell 1,000, tens of
So are
thousands.
you signing your books?
Yeah.
When people write?
Sorry?
Are you signing?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm going to sign lots of them in a minute.
And what are they going for?
They're going for $27.
Oh, really? Yes.
Plus a Tim Tam that's Subiaco Library. They're going to send you your Tim Tam.
I've decided to buy the book, so have you manipulated me?
It's a very good question. I prefer to think that I have persuaded you of the merits of this book.
Probably have time for one more question. Is there one last one?
You mentioned the cafe in Fremantle. Has WA or Fremantle or anything a major part in the novel? Or
Yeah, very much so. So this is a strong sense of place type novel, and much of it is in Freo and in the western suburbs, and there are lots of recognisable places in there and that's deliberate because I wanted everyone who was near me to say, I know that person, I actually know where they're sitting. And you know, like, it gives you the chance to poke fun at various institutions we have around here. And like, that's right.
I've just had a relative in there at
Yeah.
the time, and I went, oh, wow, that's
And it is true
Sounds
that
about-
it's true. It's a very well planned hospital, you know, with the reception at the back.
Yeah.